We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to AVRant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H.
BD, I guess is his name on Twitter, or her name, not going to judge, has an open concept great room. He's, I guess it's a he, using some EMP-Tech E3B satellite speakers. I'm now going to assume that every person who has a gender neutral name and calls himself we're saying he, that they're all she's.
Gotcha.
I think I want to have a 50% mix of girls and women. Women.
I looked at some of our YouTube analytics. I think it said 99% male, 1% female of all viewers. Of the
we
people
know who that female
specify.
is, right? There were the
Yeah.
two. There's Liz, who occasionally might accidentally click on something, and what's her name?
Abby?
Abby. I was going to
Who
say Angie.
asked a question this week. So
Did she really?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh.
hopefully we make it that far while you're
We're
still
never
here.
gonna make
I
that
might
far.
carry on alone. That's a tease for later.
No, I don't know about that. All right. Anyway, it says, he is using some EMP-Tech E3B satellite speakers, which are better than his TV's built-in speakers, but they still fall apart when there's some really loud sound. So for around $500 on these speakers, we think we could do a much better job and fix his problem in his large open living space. I kind of wonder what fall apart means, because if that's the only thing he's using, I'm wondering if it's the bass or the treble.
Well, he asks about that himself. Yeah, it is a bit tough to tell because, I mean, if you're running them full range...
They're
then,
obviously going to have issues. Now,
Yeah.
Okay, Super Bowl. All right, Super Bowl. We have a neighbor who throws a 3-day Super Bowl party. It was still going on yesterday, so Rob, who's splitting the podcast, was okay because there were still people out there partying last night, which was Monday. So I was invited to go over there. I was planning on going over there to watch the Super Bowl with them, because they always have an oyster bar, and I am down with some oysters.
Mhm.
So I instead got invited to my brother-in-law's place, where they have a TV, which the first thing I said when I walked in their house was, because they just redid their whole kitchen and living room, and that's all, open and beautiful and redone. I walked in and went, now your TV looks really small. My sister-in-law went, what? I'm like, it looks so small. How do you even see that from way over there? She's like, you think it's small? I'm like, I don't think it's small. I know it's small. So now they're talking about getting a big TV. So
Nice.
They got this nice big open concept room, this small TV that we're all huddled around like it's a dying campfire, and everybody's saying, "Can you turn it up? Can you turn it up? I can't hear the TV. Can you turn it up?" No one could hear the TV. No one could hear it. It was full blast, full bore, just going to town, right? And my brother-in-law is like, "Yeah, it's as loud as it gets." I'm like, "Oh, wow. If only you knew somebody." If only you knew somebody who had speakers just lying around his house waiting for things to do with them. If only you knew a person like that. He goes, yeah, I'm probably going to get a sound bar. I'm like...
A lot of sound bars, like, they get louder than the TV's built-in speakers, but not really that much.
Believe me, there is no talking to these people. That's not going to happen. No matter what I say to them, it's not going to happen. So anyways, that being said, you need something that can handle put out a lot of sound with very little power. So you've got EMP-Tech E3B satellite speakers. So I'm guessing he wants something small. So unfortunately, small really, really super limits you to what you can and can't do. I kind of want to push you towards something larger. If we can get you into something a little bit larger that might still look good.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've got a good, nice, big open concept room, these Focal speakers, the Birds and the Super Birds and stuff like that, I don't know how loud they can get, but they do have bigger versions of them, which are still quite narrow. They're not so deep, so they will sit. The Super Birds will sit very kind of flush on your wall, and I think they look pretty cool. There is no substitution for physics, and physics tells us you want big sound, you need a big box. There's just really no getting away from it. There's some things that you can do with a smaller box. There's some tricks that you can use to make it sound really good. But in the end, if you're going to move a lot of air, you just need to physically be able to move it. So I am going to suggest that you look into something that's has the kind of look that you can get away with that is not so, but still gives you a big enough sound. Now, when we get to the next part of his question, uh, we'll talk on maybe what some of the distortion that he's hearing because he's
Yeah.
saying they're falling apart. But that would be that's the first thing that came in my mind. Of course, the first thing
Huh.
that came in my mind was like the Super Zeros or something. But I'm like, you know what?
Mm,
He's gonna run into the same
yeah,
problems if he gets
same
something
issue.
small. Is they're
Yeah.
just small. There's only so much you can do with small. Not if you
Yeah,
want
when
to
he
listen
was
loud.
describing his room a little bit on Twitter, it was like, about 15 feet away, big open room. And I'm like, the speakers themselves might be struggling. This might not just be a
Yeah,
base thing. I mean, the E3B satellites, we like them, but they're meant for a small room. RBH will tell you they're
yeah.
meant for a small room. They're not meant for that kind of distance. They really aren't. So I had a similar thought. I'm like, I want more efficient speakers, something that can play quite loud with not necessarily a lot of watts, but actually has the capability to still absorb a lot of watts if you need to get really, really loud.
Yeah.
And I came to the HSU HB1 Mark II speakers. They're horn-loaded speakers. They're nice and efficient, about 93 decibels with 1 watt going into them, but they can absorb 250 watts all day long. And they even have like a nice rose nut finish if you want that. Those ones are still $400 a pair shipped, even in the rose nut finish, and they're less
Yeah.
than that in the standard black.
But if you're going to go
So
bigger, and he likes EMP tech already, he could go bigger EMP tech like the bookshelf
yeah,
speakers. And
I was
they,
a little see. I was a little. I mentioned those to him on Twitter. I was a little hesitant on those because they're not very efficient. They can absorb a
yeah,
ton of power and play loud, but they're not very efficient.
that's
So
true. That's
it's
true.
the
I mean, we don't. Do
combination.
we know what he's using for a source?
No, I didn't know, but I'm assuming. Like I was looking at what he was. He's like, I just wanted something better than TV speakers. I went with the E3Bs. I'm like, I'm kind of guessing he doesn't have a massive wattage AV receiver powering this thing. Maybe he does. I don't know.
I mean,
That's an
it doesn't
assumption
have
on
to
my
be
part.
massive wattage for the EMP techs. I mean, yes, they're not as efficient as any horn loaded. By the way, any horn loaded speaker almost certainly would
Yeah,
be a good choice of Klipsch. Those sorts of things that with
sure.
really high efficiency would be good. He's recommending the HSUs because they're less expensive than the Klipsch,
And I think they sound better.
And he thinks they sound better. I have not heard them in the model Mark ones or whatever they saw. I thought
Yeah.
were hot garbage. So I know the new ones are better. I still haven't heard them, so we're going to go
Okay.
with Rob on that one. I'm perfectly comfortable with going with that. Uh, that being said, if you can go bigger,
Mm.
if you can go bigger, this is really what you need to do. You just have to go bigger in order to fill. Your room's too big and you're sitting too far away. So it very well if you don't want to change your receiver, or your receiver is very low wattage. I mean, what's really low wattage these days? I mean, everything's like 95 or above.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
if it's very entry level and you're worried about that, then you go with something horn loaded like the HSUs that he's talking about. If you have a little bit more power, you can maybe go with those Focal Superbirds, and those will definitely do it. And the same if you want to stick with EMP Tech and you have a receiver that's
Right.
not exactly entry level, those EMP Tech speakers, the bookshelf ones, would be
Yeah,
just
the
fine as well.
impression series we're talking about.
Yes. So with adding a subwoofer, he asks, fix his issue. Just adding a subwoofer. To add a wrinkle, he has a local dealer offering an older SVS PB2 ISD. This is one of their massive dual 12-inch driver models in a ported box the size of a coffee table.
That's right.
And he's offering this for $600, which is, I think they were quite expensive when they were a lot more than that when they were initially offered.
Oh yeah.
So would that plus his E3B speakers be enough? My guess is no. To be honest with you, honestly, you are hearing distortion because your speakers you're running them full range.
Maybe.
You are
Well,
here.
that wasn't clear, but very possibly, yeah.
I think if you're even crossing them over at 80 hertz, these speakers are going ow. So
Yeah.
I mean, that is a problem.
Yeah.
So, but I think if you took that problem away, which is by crossing them over, I think that the subwoofer would be able to play, especially this one. It would be able to play loud enough, maybe not to pressurize the room, but certainly loud enough to get to a decent volume at your
Oh yeah.
seat.
That thing was huge. That had a lot of output.
But I'm not even sure your speakers would be able to keep up enough.
Mm-hmm.
That's in that they would distort before they got to a volume that you were comfortable with at your seat, even with a high crossover.
Yeah.
They're still going to distort. That's my guess. Which means that you're still going to is it just adding the sub going to be enough? My guess, my opinion is no. I don't know why I
Yeah,
have to say
I'm
my so
I'm
many times.
definitely leaning the same direction. I'm not going to say it's impossible, because if you did this, you might say, you know what, that was enough. Taking
Yeah.
all of the bass pressure off of the E3Bs was enough to get me to a point where I felt like it sounded okay. But it's so much either on the borderline, and I'm leaning to the side of the border that says I think you genuinely need speakers that can play louder than what you have right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be more important. I would get the speakers in this case.
Yeah, so do the older SVS subwoofers have the same kind of protection against bottoming out and distorting as the newer models? Would the PB2 ISD be enough to handle his open space? Well, okay, the second, I believe the PB2 ISD would be able to handle your open space without knowing
Yeah.
exactly the cubic feet and everything else. I mean, he says it's big. Is it big or is it just, big? Uh, I certainly think that this thing will be able to put a lot of bass into your space.
Yes.
Will it be absolutely able to pressurize, to reference volume? Maybe. it's not beyond the realm of possibility, but without knowing exactly what your room looks like.
It's
But
certainly not a sub where I would go, oh, this definitely isn't enough, though.
Right.
This is
No.
this is like, it's either gonna be enough or very close to enough.
if somebody said I had one of these subwoofers and they told me nothing else, I'm like, that's probably more than enough with what you
Yeah.
need. Regardless of, unless they're like, yes, I live in a auditorium. Oh, well, then
Yeah.
maybe you need to. So I don't know that if they have the protection, Rob. You're gonna have to.
Well, it's not the
enlighten us.
same protection that they have now. The new ones use digital signal processing. The old ones didn't. They had bash amplifiers,
Right.
which are very solid. And as long as you put even a half decent rumble filter on the bottom and some kind of low pass filter on the top, you would really have to abuse it to cause a problem.
Which means your other speakers are already going to be melted down by that point.
Yeah. So is it the same protection? No, but it is still well protected to the point that if you start to hear noise, you will have time to turn it down and prevent serious damage. I wouldn't
so
worry
choose.
about it, in other words.
So since this is a used subwoofer, anything to look out for when examining it to tell if it's in good working order? Honestly, with subwoofers and speakers in general, but with subwoofers, they don't really do that much stuff. They kind of only do the one thing that they do. So you test it by seeing if it does the thing it does without doing anything it's not supposed to do. So bringing your phone with a sweep on it, let's be generous here, 100. No, how about 200 hertz down to 10
Sure.
hertz sweep on there. With a little plug that plugs into your headphone and it goes into a RCA cable. Plug that in. Plus, play the sweep. Turn the volume up really stupid loud. I mean, not like all the way up, but loud. And then just play the sweep a couple of times. If you don't hear any buzzing, if you don't hear any clanging,
Right.
if you don't see any smoke, you're probably, frankly, you can make even this sub sound bad.
Sure.
It is
you
possible
abuse it enough.
if you abuse it. You can turn it all the way up, and you might hear some port noise. You might hear, what's wrong with the sub? What's wrong with the sub is you're a jerk. Is what's wrong with the sub. Let's be honest. This is your fault. You're bringing the problems here. But you turn it up, half, 2/3, something like that, so that you're within the realm of what should be normal operating volume for a large room like you're in. And it sounds just, and you don't hear any, because believe me, dude, you can examine the rubber surround and stuff like that. You can do all of that stuff, cosmetic things, that sort of thing. You could do all that, plug into all the inputs, change any sort of high pass, low pass things, see if that causes any issues. You could do all that, but really, if it just goes and sounds normal, and you do it 4 or 5 or 6 times, I'd be like, all right, we're good, and that would be the end of that.
Yeah, but the only other tip I'd add to that is I would leave it plugged in and turned on, either sitting idle or playing the bass sweep. It doesn't really matter, but leave it plugged in and turned on for at least 15 minutes, because sometimes people do this really quickly, and then get yourself right up close to that amplifier plate on the back. First of all, see if there's excessive heat coming off the thing, because those bash amps, they get warm, but they shouldn't get hot.
Okay.
That's a bad sign if it's getting really hot. And if you press your ear right against the cabinet of the subwoofer, you'll probably hear a faint hum, a faint buzz, just that electrical power supply faint hum that you get from almost anything, but from like a foot away, it should be dead silent. If you can hear a constant hum or buzz coming from that amplifier from a foot away or more, then that indicates something ain't quite right in that power supply anymore, because those bash amps were very quiet. If you pressed your ear against it, you could hear that faint buzz. But I've come across ones where it's like, I'm 2 feet away, I can hear it buzzing. That ain't right. It's not supposed to do that. So check that.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.